wanna
It's Friday, December 30th, the final show of 2022. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you can save. Guys, we have some really big news. Hold on, before we get into our normal pleasantries, we're gonna talk about the Thursday Night Football recap. We're gonna preview all the games on Sunday, but some big events happened over the course of the week. Mike Clay, as you know, is
I have an idea.
Blocked by a number of football players in the NFL. And there was some additional news within like the NFL circles around social media that happened this week with your social media, Mike.
There was. And I was on Instagram. This was actually a few days ago. I forgot to bring this up yesterday.
Okay.
It was actually on December 20th, and I got an Instagram notification.
Okay.
So I opened it up, and I got a new follower. And it was someone named Stephania Bell.
What?
Yeah.
You just started following Mike on Instagram, Stephania?
Stephania Bell, you know her? Follows me on Instagram now. So it's a big moment for me. I just thought I'd share that. And,
oh my gosh. I thought you were going to say
honored.
Derek Carr unblocked you.
I know.
I know. I was like, wait, he left the Raiders. He went. He looked at his social media. Now he's like a Mike Clay fan because maybe.
No, I have a different new fan.
Finally just respected by his co-host is what it is. Finally followed.
Stephania, I just want to say I'm honored. Thank you.
Stop it.
What brought it on? Was there a specific picture or post that made you say
Stephania here? Because I think I can defend Stephania.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead, Phil.
Go ahead, because I
First
can't
of all,
possibly.
Stephania can do no wrong in any of our eyes. Let's start there. Mike, I would say, is more on the low volume side on the Instagram.
This is true.
Right? Like, I would say, I don't recall the last time you posted a story on Instagram, and I don't know that you post.
But
I'm still waiting for Field to follow me. Like, I got Stephania.
I've been following you for longer than you've been following me. But I have a way to make this right. Is that everybody can go on Instagram right now.
That's right.
And go find Mike. He's Matthew Berry TMR on Instagram.
That's what it is. That's it.
I'm sorry. Mike Clay NFL on Instagram, and you can follow him there, right? And that would make you feel better. If you got like a couple hundred extra followers, you would no longer be disappointed in Stephania for abstaining from following you.
I don't post on there much, so that's like one of my most recent notifications still from like December 20th. So if more people follow me, that'll be kind of blocked out of the feed. I won't see it every day and just stare that in the eye. So
Mike
that would
Clay
help.
NFL. What would you say is your greatest contribution to Instagram?
It's definitely my daughter's video that went viral.
Oh yeah.
Wait, the best part is that Mike Clay has been on TikTok once. He has one TikTok video has a million likes.
Yeah, it's been on like TV everywhere. It's gonna be on Ridiculousness like in the spring. Yeah. It's like it just blew up. So that's it. That has nothing to do with me. Like I'm not even like verified on there. I don't post it was a running thing, right? She was running, and like all of my followers on there now are just like runners. Like, so like if I post anything with football, my follower count will just go down.
I will say this though. I have to, and with all due respect to Mike and Daniel.
Oh no.
Stephania is like a million times better at Instagram than the rest of us.
Oh gosh, of course.
My
That's why I'm
Instagram
so
is
honored.
not. Stop it. First of all, it's usually this is how you do it, right? You see something that you like or something you see that somebody posted, and then it says follow, and you're like, oh, I wasn't following them. Okay. Because it wasn't like a deliberate choice.
Oh,
do we understand this?
Yes, definitely understand that.
You know, I think it's a sign to you that you got to up the content game, put out more content, put out more stories.
Maybe
that whole videos is what I'm hearing.
Kids.
Yeah.
That's the algorithm. Yeah. All you got to do, wine, puppies, and kids.
Yeah.
Definitely wine, and I'd be following you.
Absolutely.
That's true. I have to do like the hashtag wine at the bottom.
Yeah, that's
right. You follow the tags. Okay.
Anything. Put a wine glass in your video. Just do a little reel
Easter
with
eggs.
you. Yeah, exactly.
For Mike, like at the end of it, just put like hashtag Nick Bosa DPOY.
That's what
right? That's like, do stuff like that.
49ers.
Yeah.
Yeah, just 40. Yeah. Okay.
Just
All right.
pander.
Noted.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to do that.
I'm waiting for you to take a screenshot of it just to be like finally followed by Instagram royalty and then like put it up. And that actually would be your most. Oh, did you take a screenshot
I have
of
a
it?
screenshot. It's ready. I just wanted to save it for the show. So maybe I'll share that later.
Oh, yes.
I mean, apparently it meant so much to you that happened on December 20th, and we're talking about that 10 days later.
I was all excited, but Stephania, of course, you were not here last week. So
That's right.
Of course. So I held on to it. It's been bothering me ever since. Obviously, I've been up at night.
I'm glad you finally got this off your chest.
So I feel better
into football, I think we have to do this. It's a safe space, so we can talk about this openly. Is there somebody that like you do follow or have been following for a while on Instagram or Twitter that you consider like a friend or a colleague who hasn't followed you back, and you're just like, it's like awkward, like I don't know why.
I don't know if I know. You know what I mean? I don't know that you totally know.
That's totally fair.
Oh
yeah, there's definitely some. But if
right?
is there somebody that you are aware of that you're like, dude, I have been following like Gary Striesky on Instagram for 3 years, and Gary won't follow me back.
That's funny.
Like, it's ridiculous, George. But I feel like like maybe a little bit out of the boundary of what I was thinking. Is there like an
not for me,
ESPN?
though.
Everybody follows you back except for Mike Clay, right? Yeah, or except for I guess you were following him back.
Yeah, I unfollowed now. So I can follow
play
back.
Hard to get, so now I gotta go.
Wow. Sorry,
gotta earn it.
Stop.
Producers are like, guys, just shut up. Time
please,
football, will you?
please.
Fine, let's do it then.
Chad Pennington, by the way. That's my answer.
That's the one.
He's not like an ESPN colleague. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
Think about that. Well, it's just Stephania then. Oh, by the way, she doesn't follow me on Twitter. Like, let's not.
It's
like,
only on Instagram.
I do follow you on Twitter, and shame on you.
I know.
All right, let's dive into this Thursday night football game really quickly. We don't need to spend a ton of time on this.
It's almost as good as our last conversation.
Yeah. Right.
Wow. Dak Prescott.
Nothing new. Let's move on.
Yeah, it was not great for me from a passing game perspective from Dak Prescott. 282 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 14.3 fantasy points.
It's just so tough. Like, it's a 14.3 fantasy point effort from Dak Prescott. It is it really was a 16.8 performance from Dak Prescott because he throws, and I went back and did the math last night, a 17-yard pass to Peyton Hendershot, their rookie tight end. Yeah. It could not be more
so unfair
in the numbers, on the numbers, if Dak Prescott handed him the football off. Yeah. And Peyton Hendershot just flubbed it, and it gets picked off.
I mean, he literally bobbled it into.
It was literally, it was like, hey, Kevin Byard, like a late Christmas present. Here's an interception for you.
And he was like, hello.
Yeah, so think about that. The impact of that play is obviously 2 points taken away from Dak, plus the 17 yardage for that's another half or so of a point that Dak does not get.
Yep.
Obviously, the drive would have continued, which more upside there. So I do feel like 14.3 points, not nearly what you're hoping for if you started Dak last night, but I'm not putting this all on Dak. He also had a fumbled center quarterback exchange in which the guy who recovered it was the nose tackle, whose hands were over the line of scrimmage. Like, they showed a shot of it. It was like when the ball was snapped, it was T.R. Tart, who's just an absolute legend. Guy did a great barrel roll last night, but like clearly offsides, like the easiest call in sports, and they missed it. But still, like 3 of the turnovers for Dak last night, one of them was bad. Bad interception to Kevin Byard later in the game. But this night could have been, put it this way, if you check the box score at halftime, you were miserable. 0.7 fantasy points for Dak. You will take 14.3 fantasy points from Dak, given how the first half unfolded.
Yeah, this was really a tale of the 2 pass catchers here. We can talk about the running backs too, but it was CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz that came on.
Awesome.
They were fantastic. 11 catches on 14 targets for 100 yards for CeeDee Lamb, 21 fantasy points. And Dalton Schultz, 7 catches for 56 yards and 2 touchdowns, 24.6 fantasy points. It was frustrating for me because I know we talked about Tony Pollard not being in this game. I thought there was going to be more ground game usage. I didn't expect this much from Dalton Schultz or CeeDee Lamb. I thought Zeke was going to be more involved. And Zeke actually was involved from a volume perspective. Yeah. He just wasn't very efficient.
It's just they shouldn't have been running the ball as much as they did last night.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't working at all, but this was so far out of all of our control. The Titans had their 4th preseason game guys out there. I guess second preseason game, because we only have 3 now going forward. And the Cowboys kind of threaded the needle, right? Had enough guys out there to win. But like Zeke was in a timeshare with Malik Davis last night, who played basically as much as Zeke did, had basically the same amount of volume, was actually more effective than Zeke on a per carry basis, had the one big run last night. So Dallas showed that, like, while they wanted to win last night, they were not going to go full throttle. And if running the football a ton was what they wanted to do, they were going to do it, even if it was clear that if Dak Prescott wanted to throw for 425 last night, he probably could have.
Yeah. There's just not much here. I mean, there's nothing to say on the Titans side.
No.
The Cowboys,
there is.
What?
I absolutely smashed your board bet.
No. The
it.
only winner of the board bet was me.
What?
Because
Stephania wins the board
all
bet.
of you were talking about somebody not named
Malik Willis? Josh Dopp?
You're all talking about Malik Willis.
Yeah, so wait,
You
hold
were
on.
not
How many
talking about
passing yards
Josh
did he
Dobbs.
have last night?
Under 100.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record. Yeah.
Yeah, but come on.
Still,
we didn't know. Like, we had no idea he was going to start. Apparently, Mike Vrabel said they knew all week. Oh. So they were being
I can't believe I'm the one defending Field here after Field
thank
came
you,
after
Daniel.
me.
Look, no, but you were supposed to be if it was even 100. You were
fair.
under 100?
Nope.
Yeah, under 100.
And you were
I was over.
One
you
of
were
us
over.
exactly 100.
So all of you,
two of us were
had
definitely wrong.
You were all hitched to Malik Davis. The only one.
A lot of lessons.
Willis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot
Whatever.
of lessons,
Him
though,
too.
learned. Josh Dobbs, I know nothing to say for the Titans. Completely agree with Mike, but my hat goes off to you, Josh Dobbs.
Yeah.
Thought you were very admirable last night.
Of course, yeah.
Given the circumstances, and just impressed. A player whose character has always been a shining light in the league. I was glad to see him get a start last night, and glad to see him perform.
Parents there. It was
great. Yeah, it was
great.
Had to pay $320
bucks
to pay for his car to get out of the airport in Detroit. Drove it down. I mean, cool story. I know they lost, and I'm not so confident in them winning next week against Jacksonville, but a cool story, and happy for Josh Dobbs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he'll probably start next week too. So we'll be
I
talking
would
about
be
him next
stunned
week
if
and
he
the
has to start.
implications. Yeah, and it adds some life to Burks
helped,
and Robert Woods, and because they threw it a lot. They were not throwing at all with Malik Willis. That's a big change. They're going to need that next week to keep up with Trevor Lawrence.
All right, let's move it ahead and preview what is left of our Week 17 games.
Oh boy.
Next matchup we have, in case you did not hear all the other matchups, go back and listen to the Thursday podcast. Now we are talking Browns at Commanders. Lineup locks for this game include Nick Chubb and David Njoku. Stephania, I want to get the latest updates that we have on Antonio Gibson leading into this game.
Not practicing.
That's not great.
No, but you know what was great? What was great, though, is at the beginning of the week, Ron Rivera said he had a sprain, and they were like, a sprain what? He was like, a sprain.
Yeah,
It's just
I know.
a sprain.
It was so
Like
ridiculous.
hockey coaches around the country were like, that's awesome. You know, hockey, they say upper or lower body. Rivera just goes sprain.
I know.
I have a sprain right now.
I know, but it's kind of rude because we're going to find out anyway because the injury report comes out. So it lists his knee and his foot. Yeah. So maybe if we want to get Rivera off the hook, maybe he just, there was too much for him to go into. It's just too much.
Detail, yeah.
So whatever it is, it doesn't look great. He wasn't running that well, a little bit banged up going into last week too. I don't feel great about Antonio Gibson for the weekend.
Okay, let's start with the Browns really quickly, then we'll come back to the Commanders. What is it that we're supposed to do with Amari Cooper, who has been wide receiver 43 in fantasy points since Deshaun Watson took over, and now we are in a winner-go-home spot? Mike, how are you approaching Amari given what's happened since Deshaun came back?
Yeah, the top receiver for the offense, it's dead last in points since Deshaun Watson took over. I know they had a bad weather game last week. It hasn't been great in that department, but he also hasn't played well, right? His efficiency has been horrific. They have 2 touchdowns during the stretch, so it's been rough. 9.3 fantasy points per game, no touchdowns. If you want a positive here, 7.8 targets per game during the 4 games. He had 10 last week. That's his most since Watson took over. Washington has been pretty good against receivers, so that's factored in a little bit why we're a little bit lower, but still 24. I mean, he's in 12-teamers, a wide receiver, a borderline wide receiver 2 still. He's still a heavily targeted, highly talented player, and we expect that offense just to get better and better moving forward. So I still think you start him, Daniel, but I know it doesn't feel great right now. It doesn't feel great.
Doesn't feel great, but you're saying almost 8 targets per game within this offense, and you expect sooner or later that regression to hit, knowing how good he is and what you expect this this passing game to be able to be.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, as Mike just laid out. But if you think that between the better combination of weather and circumstances, that could certainly help. Deshaun's only had 1 game out of 4 with more than 31 passing attempts. That was the game against Cincinnati when Cooper was quiet, but he still had 6 targets. Like, the volume's there enough, and I don't believe there's going to be a big breakout game from Deshaun Watson in these final 2, but I think there's a serviceable enough game this Sunday that I still have Cooper right around top 25 wide receiver territory.
I'm with you.
All right, let's talk about the Commanders' backfield, because I think given what's going on with Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson's value could
Smash week.
jump immensely.
Matchup is just right.
I love this. Yeah, I mean, especially if Gibson's out, it should be the Brian Robinson show. He should be heavily involved here. He had 22 carries last week, 20 or more touches in 3 of his last 4. But look, 22 last week against the Niners. I mean, even when they knew there's no chance we could run, the efficiency was awful as we expected. They still committed to running the football. And now you're playing Cleveland. They've allowed the 4th most yards, the 3rd most fantasy points, and the 2nd most touchdowns with 18 to running backs so far this season. I know he's not involved in the passing game. That scares you a little bit. But in this matchup, for a guy that could see 25 touches.
What is king, Mike?
Touches.
What is king?
Volume.
I learned that following you on Instagram.
Hey! That's true.
I mean,
it's a really good follow, just for the record.
I would say you learned that on Twitter, probably not Instagram, because you just started following me last week. So that's not.
And you don't have a lot of volume.
Doesn't mean I don't
Instagram,
swear.
actually.
Doesn't mean I don't swear.
I was going
through
to say,
your
Mike,
feed.
you got to practice what you preach, man.
Yeah,
Volume is
exactly.
king. If you
Volume
want to
is
get more
king.
followers, like
I mean,
Stephania.
all right.
I'll work on
throwing
it this
it.
offseason.
You know
I was
who
trying to get that. You didn't
Okay.
pick up what I was putting down.
Okay, nope, I didn't. But I'll
Is,
work on it. I'm gonna work on it.
is volume still going to be king with Terry McLaurin here this week, knowing that he's going to have Carson Wentz under center?
Yeah, so I'm of two minds here. Like, I think enough that you're still, I think, a reasonably confident individual if you have Terry McLaurin in your lineup. I think the part that's a bit concerning is just that, as we know, Jahan Dotson has been so much more involved with Carson Wentz under center than he was when Taylor Heineke was under center. I should note that, of course, Dotson was hurt for a stretch of Heineke's tenure. I should also note that, like, Jahan Dotson hasn't had like super dominant volume over the past few weeks, but enough to take away from Terry McLaurin. So he's wide receiver 26 on my board. Looks like I'm higher than you guys by just a little bit. But you would think that if there was one player who was a big play threat on the Washington offense this season, it would probably be Terry McLaurin. It turns out it's Jahan Dotson, which could very well be a byproduct of the way the teams are defending Terry McLaurin. They're saying if somebody's going to beat us, it ain't going to be number 17, which has left number 1 wide open on several occasions.
I think it's interesting the gap, though, we have here. We have
Should be narrower, you're saying?
Yeah, we have McLaurin 26, 28 in that range. We have Dotson 40th to 41st. I mean, that's really close, about 13 spots. It's incredible what Dotson has done in recent weeks. He had, by the way, 4 touchdowns in his first 4 games. All of that was with Carson Wentz, and then Field just talked to you about that big gap. But now a touchdown in 3 straight and 24 targets during that stretch. So the volume has actually been pretty good. Even the last time Heineke was in there, right, for a little bit for 2 of those starts. So, I'm worried about McLaurin's volume going down. That's why he's much lower than where he's been in the past. Instead of top 12, top 15, we're talking late, end of the 20s.
I will say this. I feel like the show in recent years probably gravitated more towards like chasing numbers like target share and targets and, running back opportunities. But sometimes these notable stat streaks are fun to pass along. And Jahan Dotson has a streak of 3 straight games with 50-plus receiving yards and a touchdown catch. That's tied for the longest such streak in the NFL this season. So it just underscores he's a big play threat, right? It was an interesting draft pick. I like the player a lot, only because you would have thought they felt pretty good about their wide receiver group. But imagine if the quarterback play gets elevated next year, somehow, some way, which that's a whole conversation for like March. This offense could be really fun with those 3 guys at wide receiver.
Yeah, I think teams are realizing how important the wide receiver position is. We've seen it with the trades and the extensions this offseason.
Totally.
And we've seen teams that don't have a need at receiver prioritizing that position, right? I mean, this is probably a stretch, but even like the Jets had Corey Davis and Elijah Moore and Braxton Berrios came on last year. They take a first-round pick, not a second round, a first-round pick. Yeah. Cincinnati, Jamar Chase.
That to me is the most obvious one, right? I mean, he's a top 5 pick when there's a left tackle and Penei Sewell sitting there waiting for you.
And guess what? No regrets for either team, so far.
Oh, it's worked out beautifully for all. Yep, totally has.
Lions are pretty happy with Penei Sewell. I just want to say that.
Red zone threat.
We'd be pretty happy with Jamar Chase too, I think, as well. But
as long as you don't miss on that early first, I think you're good. Yeah,
that's right.
They did not.
All right, let's move ahead. Talk Jags at Texans. Lineup blocks for this one include T-Law, Travis Etienne, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. I've only listed Jaguars so far. All right.
Well, we're gonna get to the Texans. You can find out all the Texans lineup blocks by checking out Mike Clay NFL on Instagram.
That's right.
So they're all available there.
You'll notice there's no posts.
Stephania, quick update on. We've been having a lot of Texans injury reports for wide receivers the last couple of weeks. Who do we have in and or out this week?
No, it's just I think the only news is, if people missed it, that Nico Collins got added to injured reserve. He's been out since week 14, and this, he was starting to come along a little bit. I mean, Brandon Cooks was down, but now Brandon Cooks will play out the rest of the year. Nico Collins will not.
Brandon Cooks,
Who
Moore
existed last week. Brandon Cooks did.
Yeah, he did.
Scored a touchdown.
9 targets.
Yeah. I was like so proud of him.
Back to trusting him territory yet with those 9 targets?
Not
That's
for your
be a no
fantasy.
For me, okay. Yeah. I mean, that probably was the best game of his season.
Yeah.
I just to Stephania's point, with the championship on the line, I've got him as wide receiver 37. It's just been such an inconsistent season, to put it kindly, for Brandon Cooks.
He last had 14 fantasy points in week 4.
That feels like a long time ago.
I'm actually
It is week 17.
How are we looking at, and I know you and I talked about this earlier this week, but how are you looking at the pass catchers here, understanding that so many teams run well against the Texans, but now you've got Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, a lot of these wide receivers that, we have them ranked fairly high, but the Texans don't give up a ton of fantasy points to wide receivers.
My answer is I love Travis Etienne this week.
Okay.
Right? I'm nervous about the receivers. I think with the volume and the production you've seen from Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, it's kind of it's hard to bench them. It really is.
Tough to go away from them.
So, I mean, Zay Jones.
Even with that week 16 dud from Zay Jones?
Yeah, we expected in that matchup, right? And with the weather against the Jets, I mean, it wasn't a shocker, but still 7+ targets at 5 straight, 10.2 per game during the stretch. He had that 3 touchdown game. The concern, though, is, and again, I think a lot of people think Houston and think, easy matchup, but second fewest targets, fewest catches, fewest touchdowns, 5 touchdowns to receivers this season, 5 touchdowns. No one's hit 20 points against him since week 4 at the wide receiver position. They're just so good against that spot because teams don't have to throw against them. So it makes me nervous.
Only thing that I'll add here, and I don't know what this exactly means for fantasy purposes, is we saw the Titans last night essentially waved a white flag before the game began. The Jaguars are in the same spot, right? Nothing is clinched by winning against Houston on Sunday. It would only be able to clinch the AFC South if they win the following Sunday against the Titans, which I expect to be flexed into prime time. So does that impact the way that they play these skill guys? I am operating as if they are going to play their guys. I just think it's different when you're a young team that hasn't earned or proven anything as of yet. The Titans have like a, back-to-back playoff berths, like is a veteran team with like aging players as it were. So I expect the Jaguars to play a bunch, play their guys as usual on Sunday, but maybe just like flag it. Like if there's a pregame report somewhere on Sunday morning, like just monitor that.
This isn't for their playoff chances. They don't need to win each of the next 2.
But
they just need to beat the Titans.
I think to Field's point, they're going to go through all these guys are going to play. The only thing you think is maybe if they were to get up big, they'd go up. But the Texans have hung around in games.
Texans
hang around. So I actually don't see that scenario, and I don't think they're going to pull them if they were up even by a comfortable margin. I don't think they're going to risk losing, even though it's not necessary for playoff standpoint. It's sort of necessary for this team's mentality standpoint, I think, going into next week. Yeah.
And for the record, Doug Peterson did say, no, not rest. Every game counts. I'm not resting anyone. We've kind of heard that coach speak before, but it sounded genuine. I don't think, especially this week, I don't think they're going to rest anybody.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move ahead, and we'll talk 49ers at Raiders next. Lineup locks for this one include CMC, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Josh Jacobs, and Devontae Adams.
Yeah, we couldn't fit Jerusalem onto the bottom of the screen.
Wow. He's not pictured. Stop it. I do want to ask you, Stephania, about Deebo Samuel. What are the expectations for him this week?
I think this is interesting. I see him as a lineup lock there. I'm not really sure he plays. Deebo Samuel came back to practice, and that was just yesterday. It was the first time he's practiced since he was out injured week 14 against Tampa Bay. And remember, he too has 2 body parts that were injured, the ankle and the knee. And Kyle Shanahan had a really lengthy answer, as he does, which I think one of the things he's good about is he will go into his rationale on some things. And he went into the rationale talking about how they're dealing with players who have been hurt recently and trying to get them healthy, protecting players for the playoffs, because obviously we know what their goal is. And so his thing is we want the guys who need to get healthy to get as healthy as they can. Guys who are currently healthy, obviously they don't want to have undue risk, but he also thinks it's a problem if you don't play for 3 weeks and then you're trying to play your best football when it really matters. I am also a big advocate of that. So I think when you look at that, that means guys like Elijah Mitchell, who could be coming back soon from they're going to be patient and wait with him. Deebo Samuel coming off an injury. Who's more important in the playoffs? We saw it last year. Deebo Samuel alongside Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey limited in practice dealing with a knee issue that he's been dealing with for a few weeks, but you haven't seen it turn up on the field. So I think they're going to be running the same starting lineup that we've seen. I don't think it's Deebo this week.
Yeah, I think Kyle is giving Christian McCaffrey some rest so that he can carry our fantasy teams in championships.
That's what it is.
Very important.
That's what
good matchup too, right? I mean, it's a good matchup for Christian McCaffrey every week, but it's a tremendous.
This is like this matchup, and also Brock Purdy is fully healthy now, which is good to see because he'd been dealing with the oblique and the rib injury, so he's coming along. But even players like Nick Bosa, who's candidate for DPOY, and I think has
Leader
probably earned that. But do they give him a chance? Because with the sack record, potentially, do they allow him to play enough to get that? Like, I think they will play these guys, but if they were to get to a really good lead on the Raiders, maybe you'd see some of them come out, but they would have already done what you needed for your fantasy team.
Mm-hmm. So let me then ask this question. Given all of that context, if we don't think Deebo Samuel is going to play, how will that impact the way that we look at Brandon Ayuk? Because he has had such an average ceiling the last 4 weeks.
I mean, he had a couple spike games there earlier, but that was when Deebo was playing, right? It's been super random. He's kind of falling into that boom bust category we talk about, where you just put him in and hope he scores 2 touchdowns because the volume is not going to be great and you just don't know what you're going to get. So over 9.5 fantasy points, but under 14 4 of his last 5, right? So he's actually fallen into this area. I guess I said boom bust, but lately he's just been mediocre,
he's just like,
right? He's the boom has not been there lately is probably the best way to put it.
What would you call it in between a boom and bust?
Mediocre? I don't know.
I would call it.
Oh, wait, is it mid?
Average.
I know kids say mid now.
Mid.
Oh,
Mid.
yeah.
Yes, it's been a very mid-month and a week for Brendan Ayuk. That's a fair way of putting it. Yeah, not bad, Mike. I'm impressed by you.
Look at you. Did you pick that up on social media?
That's it. That's what it is. I'm looking on Instagram more, scrolling the feed, learning some of them newfangled words. Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, like, I don't have any insight, and like I'm playing these players, but I just want to sorry, Stephania. I want to wish Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams to look at themselves on Sunday. That's all.
Yes, please.
I'm nervous. So yeah, that's it.
Need that real bad?
You want to do stuff?
I want them to play like they normally do.
How? Let me
well,
ask.
Devontae Adams, to be fair, is not totally in his control.
I know. I still want it to happen.
Okay.
That's all.
You're just putting it out there.
Like CeeDee Lamb last night, like so many bubble screens. Just
yes,
get him,
totally.
Catches. Just get him.
There was a time where he had CeeDee Lamb had 6 catches for 33 yards last night. I was like, I don't care.
That works. Hey,
that's a catch. That's a catch.
You want to be like Rashad White? That's totally fine. Yeah. No, I'm serious. You're playing Devontae and you're playing Josh Jacobs, but just please let them be. I don't need 30 points from Josh Jacobs this weekend. I'm not expecting it. But if I get 18 from Josh Jacobs, I would do a backflip, which would probably be bad.
You heard it here
first,
kids.
I can't.
Okay, wow. Okay.
And Devontae, just 12 targets. That doesn't seem like too much to ask, is it?
No.
12.
I think as long as they do that. If that happens, though, real talk, it's going to be tough for me to figure out if I'm starting Darren Waller as the third part of this offense, because I know that Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs are the guy, but Darren Waller is still a guy.
Counterpoint.
Okay.
It's tough for me to figure out whether to start Darren Waller, even if Devontae Adams has 0 targets on Sunday. I don't know what to do, right?
That's fair.
Still not a full-time player. It's a backup quarterback. He hasn't had a massive target share since he has returned.
8 targets in 2 games. You're playing against the Niners, really good against tight ends. I mean,
we all have him outside our top 12 at the tight end position for that reason.
I wouldn't want to start him. I wouldn't feel great about it.
He's run a route on just 55% of the dropbacks in the 2 games back.
So that may not change.
It may not. And he's probably, I'm sure this is part of it, is being mindful of a hamstring injury that cost him nearly 2 months.
Outside of that, would you start any tight end for a basically first-time starting quarterback against the San Francisco 49ers
Travis
defense
Kelce and George Kittle would make me think about it. That's for sure.
That's that's about it right now for
Except
me.
for George couldn't really play against himself.
That's true. That's true. He couldn't. All right, let's talk Jets at Seahawks as our next matchup here. Lineup blocks for this one include Garrett Wilson. I love to see Garrett Wilson in the lineup blocks. Kenneth Walker, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. The reason why Garrett Wilson is a lineup block for me is because Stephania. Is it true that we're going to have Mike White back under center?
It is indeed. It appears that way. Full practice has been cleared to return. Expect Mike White to be under center. The Fighting Mike Whites.
The Fighting Mike Whites. That should elevate the entirety of this Jets offense across the board.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely does. And that's why we feel good about Wilson as a lineup block with White in there.
Yep.
Probably feel less good about Corey Davis just because that was Zach Wilson's guy. It always seemed like he was their number one when Wilson was in there. I mean, Wilson's the only guy I feel great starting. I'm not starting the other 2 receivers, especially against Seattle. They haven't allowed much to. Actually, I wrote about this somewhere. Fourth fewest fantasy points to receivers, 3rd fewest to the perimeter, 4th fewest wide receiver targets, the 5th lowest yards per target. So you're not getting receiver volume or efficiency against Seattle, which is incredible because we spent a month early this year picking on them because they were struggling early on. Why? Because they had 2 day 3 rookies. And Michael Jackson, who was an undrafted free agent a couple years ago, journeyman. That's their corners. And they're one of the best teams against receivers this season.
Crazy.
It's unbelievable. So
where can people read that if they want to be able to read that?
The Shadow Report at ESPN Plus.
ESPN Plus.
Where do you post links to the Shadow Report?
On Twitter.
On Twitter.
And
if
I guess
Instagram,
now.
Mike Clay NFL.
Link in bio, right?
Yeah,
There's a link in bio.
that's it.
That's it.
Mike,
Yeah, do
speaking
that.
cool kid, Mike. I love it.
I'm
learning
learning
the ropes.
That's right.
Wait, we think Tyler Lockett's playing. Do we?
So this is really interesting. I mean, Pete Carroll could not be more effusive about the surgeon who operated on Tyler Lockett because he's talking about what they've
Is
seen.
it like
That's not like Pete
Pedro
Carroll,
Carroll or something? Is
No,
like his
no,
cousin
no,
who's
no.
like
But it's got to,
trying to drive some business his
look,
way?
we all know when you go and have your hand surgery in LA, you stay in LA for rehab. It's Dr. Steve Shin who has operated on Drew Brees and Russell Wilson and all these guys get hand injuries. He's one of the top in the country, certainly, and one of the ones they go to. And you know what, as he has described when I've heard him speak about these type of injuries, when you get the hardware in there, once that stabilizes a fracture, you can get moving right away as fast as the player can tolerate it and as hard as the player is willing to work. So there's no question about Tyler Lockett's work ethic, and that's part of the reason that he stayed down in LA a few extra days. And then this week, he had told Pete Carroll, he believed that he would be back in week 17, that he was going to give it a shot. Well, yesterday he returned to practice, and it sounds like he's catching passes and he's doing things that are making them think he could be out there. And Pete Carroll basically said he's blown away by it, hasn't committed to him playing yet, but everything is pointing in the direction of him returning.
Wow. As a fellow broken hand survivor, I am impressed by Tyler.
You
Lockett
know all the
recovery.
body parts. So do you know where your second metacarpal is?
I do, yeah. So these are the metacarpi.
Metacarpals.
Metacarp. So yeah, we've got 1, 2 right here.
Yeah, 2 is here.
1, 2 right here.
Yeah,
I don't count well,
index
yeah.
finger, because 1 is
But yeah,
your
see,
thumb.
there's a spiral
But nice
fracture.
try.
You see that?
Yeah.
See the scar tissue.
Yeah.
from there.
Oh
right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
You can see
You
it.
had that
See it.
injury.
Oh
You gotta
wow,
look
look
at
at
this from
that.
this scan.
No,
You can see
totally.
it there. I know it's like.
How do you even go through life with that?
Well, you know, not all heroes wear capes.
That's it. That's,
So,
yeah. All right. So, can I ask a question then?
No.
If the,
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
No,
If
you can't.
there was at least a thought that Tyler Lockett was going to be back, that would jump Geno Smith up a little bit for me. I feel like Geno has struggled without Tyler Lockett being able to be a part of his wide receiving core.
I don't know if it's that as much as the matchups he's had to deal with as of late. I mean, we did expect better last week, and he did fall short. He hasn't done that a lot this season, but you know, this is tough.
Really tough matchup.
Really tough. 13 touchdowns through the air against the Jets this season.
That seems
week
bad.
17. That's they've been really good. It is at home. We know Geno's been a QB1 this season, but this is a really tough matchup here. Don't feel great about it unless you're buying the revenge game narrative. Going
Yeah,
up
what are the
against his old
analytics
team.
on revenge games? Do they cancel out the other stuff?
They are not a factor. In the
They don't do
So
the
I'm
projection.
not-
Okay,
If you're going to break
all
a tie with it, go for it. But
Right.
worry about that. And by the way, also, I'll just pin this on because it kind of applies here as well. Tyler Lockett, too, coming back and facing, 60% of the time he's outside. It's going to be Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. Same thing for DK Metcalf, about 85% of the time.
Wonder if they
Really
would
tough
go.
matchup.
Wonder if they would ever shadow. I know. Have they shadowed much at all
I
this
think
season?
they've shadowed one game this season.
Wonder
Yeah,
if
I think we talked about the
this
Jets,
might
I think it
fit
was.
the
Or
bill,
the Bills, I mean.
For one, only because body profile wise, Sauce Gardner, big long corner,
Yep.
DJ Reed, smaller corner, former Seahawks, another revenge game there as well. Could be more of
right.
like he trails Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf gets the Sauce Gardner treatment. That
could be
By the
fun.
way, like what a great matchup this is.
Yeah.
Great matchup. And we've talked about this in recent matchups for the Jets, where like they've the opposing teams had multiple good wide receivers, but one of them played from the slot a lot. As Mike just said, like Seattle's guys play in the perimeter. Right? Like their slot presence is either wide receivers, we don't talk about that much in fantasy, or the occasional flexed out tight end. This should be the popcorn matchup of the weekend.
Yep.
All right, let's move ahead. Couple games left. We got Vikings at Packers next. Lineup blocks. There's a lot of them here. Include Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hawkinson, and Aaron Jones. But Stephania, we got a couple of Packers injuries that we need to make sure we have all the information on. What's the latest?
Yeah, Aaron Jones is one of them. And I feel like he's been on the injury report pretty consistently, and we've never really paid attention to it because he plays. He plays, but he hasn't been as dominant as he has been in the past. And I think part of the reason for that is he has been banged up. He's actually a couple weeks ago, he left briefly because he aggravated the shin injury that he had, and he ends up coming back. But, he's not running as much. He's not running the same. So I do think that they're affecting him. It has both his knee and his ankle that are bothering him limited in practice. I suspect he'll play. I don't see any indication that he won't, but I do think this is a real thing that's affecting him. And then Christian Watson, it's funny because he talked about this game wanting to come back and right the wrong where he had that huge drop.
Opening play of the season.
And that was the first look that everybody got at him after he'd been injured from OTAs and come back. And the look on Aaron Rodgers' face when that drop happened and the feeling that everyone felt. I mean, it took him a long time to get the trust back. So he would really like to do that in this game. Here's the problem. He has a hip injury. He's not practicing. And when asked about it, he's like, yeah, I need to, if that can come along and I can get healthy enough. I don't know that he's going to be ready to go by this weekend.
Worth noting, not that Stephania doesn't know this, but in case you see it on the injury report today, Aaron Rodgers could be listed as questionable going into the game. He missed practice Wednesday with a knee injury.
If you saw the play, he had a defender fall right. He was going down. He was getting sacked, and then I don't know who it was, but they fell big body right on top, and he got up and he kind of limped back to the huddle. So that is the knee issue that he came out of the game with. Yeah, but I think Aaron Rodgers, as you know, played with a broken bone in his hand.
Also, if you have made it this far with Aaron Rodgers, and I was trying to think, what's the minimum threshold of a quarterback that you've been playing for most of the season, if not all of the season, you could still reasonably make the championship with? I think Rodgers might be right there on the border.
Do you think anyone has Tom Brady?
I think Brady has actually outscored Rodgers, so he's a little bit above him. I think Rodgers is right there, but no one's in the championship if they've been playing I don't know, whatever. Name
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Russell Wilson.
I mean,
that's
that a while ago.
Whatever. There's probably some guys that you're just hold on.
Matthew Stafford didn't.
No one made
no
one made the finals. Probably with Derek Carr as their quarterback, or guys of that nature, right? But Rodgers is probably right there on that threshold. And I think that Rodgers could be due for his best game of the season because the Vikings pass defense is the gift that keeps on giving.
And
the numbers are just out of control. It's astronomical.
I mean, this is where Aaron Rodgers wanted to be, right? Them still a chance to
So a huge week could be coming here for Aaron Rodgers. And do we really I don't think too many people have this decision, but factoring in the injury, if you guys were given the choice to start Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon, who are you taking this week?
Tough right now.
I'm taking if Aaron Jones is active and
assuming he's active and all that, and we don't get any reports saying he's going to be on a 20-play snap count.
Yeah, if that's the situation, it's Jones. I mean, he's clearly been ahead all season long. Dillon has spiked a little bit as of late because Dillon has been limited and has missed time. That's the only reason why he scored in 4 straight and he had played 57% of the snaps last week. That was way higher than where he's
telling you, though, that's where Aaron Jones is. That'd be my concern, is it's not if it was sporadic or spaced out. But the reason it's been that way is because Aaron Jones hasn't been running like himself. So do you all of a sudden think that he's better? I mean, I'll be interested when we get to Sunday after today's practice and we have a little bit more vibe from the team and the people around it, then maybe I'd feel more comfortable making that decision. Yeah. But right now, I would say they're leaning on Dillon because Aaron Jones isn't himself.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Well, they should be able to just lean on passing the ball a ton, like Field said. Mike, if Christian Watson doesn't go, are you looking at Allen Lazard, Romeo Dobbs? Good matchup for any of these guys?
Definitely. We would expect it to be, Lazard would be my primary play from this group, and then Dobbs would be second in line, and then if you're really desperate in a deep league, Randall Cobb, right? So that would be your core 3 there. Last week, Lazard had a good game, first one in a while, so that's good. And, of course, to your point, Fields, great matchup right here. Most fantasy points to receivers, most catches, and most yards to that position this season for Minnesota. I mean, even last week, you think about Daniel Jones, right? He's kind of hung in the QB1 conversation because of his legs. Last week, he was just throwing it around easily last week. Three receivers have good 13+ fantasy points for all 3 Giants receivers.
Yeah.
He was chucking it around. So I would expect the same from Rodgers, and it benefits these receivers. Hopefully Watson can somehow make it in there. He had 8 targets on 25 snaps last week.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah,
crazy. He's been awesome. He's going to be a really valuable player for them next year.
No doubt about it.
This really fits that narrative, though, as much as I'm not thrilled about this, Field Yates. When you look at Aaron Rodgers, these next 2 games are win or go home for the Packers to make the playoffs, and they play the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, both of whom can be thrown on like nobody's business. So Aaron Rodgers has 2 nice matchups here back-to-back if you play into Week 18.
Both played at Lambeau as well.
Yeah, even worse for that.
What was it, 3 weeks ago? We were talking about Jordan Love's taking over to finish the season,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's gone. Yeah.
Well, remember, I mean,
Check on the weather
even
now, just for
Aaron
fun.
Rodgers said, that he would understand, if they were out of it. But it's like he did everything in his
Flip the
power
switch.
to make sure that they were
He just
not
did what
gonna
Aaron
happen.
Rodgers
It's
does.
really fascinating.
It's amazing how weather looks like it's going to be such a non-factor this week. I just checked
After
Green
last
Bay.
week?
Yeah,
Yeah.
after last week,
know,
we're a
it's like-
week further into winter, and it's supposed to be 37 on Sunday in Green Bay. That's like summer weather for
Yeah.
them.
The high is 57 up here today.
It's supposed to
Yeah.
be
I mean-
70 next week here.
Is it?
Wednesday, in the middle of the to 70 degrees.
I'm
That's
going to the beach.
incredible.
All right, yeah.
See
I'm
you
going to
guys
Mike's
later.
pool.
Let's go. I'm opening it up. I'll open it up when I get home today.
Don't
We'll
even
get
need the
warm-
heater.
Do you
when it's
only
70
invite
degrees.
Instagram followers?
That's right. That's why you're on there now. You're on the list now. I added you to the
Wondered
list.
why I wasn't getting those
I
invites
would,
this
I
summer.
would love to see your daughter standing at the door of the gate with like a little checklist, being like, "Oh no, Stephania. Oh, yep, Stephania's on here. Okay, good to go."
Yep, she's on there now.
All right. Next one up. Next game we've got a couple.
Battle of
left here.
LA.
Rams at Chargers lineup blocks for this one include. Am I reading this right?
Yeah, you are.
Cam
you are.
Akers.
Yeah.
Pain.
is on this list.
It's been awesome.
I don't want to talk about
Austin
that
Eckler, Mike
Mike Clay
Williams,
put him on
and
the list.
Keenan Allen. I love it. I mean, in all honesty, we got to start. Stephania, other than any injuries we need to talk about?
Yeah.
Just watch Austin Eckler, limited in practice both days, but I think we're pretty good at reading tea leaves with Eckler, and he's so fantasy friendly.
Yes, he is.
He's very, very good about it, but and still staying within the parameters of what he needs to do for his team. But I have not gotten the impression that there's anything that's going to keep him away.
This is not changing how I'm ranking him, but I would not be stunned if he saw like 15 to 20% less work on Sunday because they have on occasion relied on backup running backs, whether it was Josh Kelly. I mean, early in the year, Larry Roundtree got some burn. Sony Michel got some burn. Like Isaiah Spiller could play some. Like they'll have a few other opportunities for those running backs for guys not named Austin Eckler on Sunday. I still have him way up on my board, but I'm anticipating that given the ankle injury and given the fact that the Chargers probably are going to be at worst the 6th seed. They could get to the 5 seed. It would take them winning and probably the Ravens losing the next couple of games, which is possible given the fact that Lamar Jackson is still such a question mark.
Yeah. Let's start here with. Do you want to talk about Cam Akers?
Yeah, just give us props, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, RB 67 through week 12, spent a month away from the team. We thought it was over with, right? I mean, that could have been his career right there.
Yes.
RB 4 in his last 4 games. He has been terrific. 100 yards plus or a touchdown in 4 straight games. And last week had what we kind of hoped for when we were drafting him early in the 4th round in the offseason, 25 touches, 147 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He could have been a league winner if he was their lead back all season. We don't know fully what went on there behind closed doors, but obviously it wasn't great. But now this is the guy we hope for, this second-round pick a couple years ago. And one last thing, playing the Chargers, 5.5 yards per carry.
Matchup.
Awful. Great matchup. I mean,
It's a great
This is-
matchup.
But also for
He's on
everybody
one.
who was prepared to say that it was the Achilles and he was done and he couldn't come back and this is that, clearly that's not it either.
Well, I was going to say, you factor in all of these things we're discussing right now. He's been getting absurd volume of late.
Yes.
But 2 months ago, if you got absurd volume for the Rams, it was like 18 carries for 37 yards with no touchdowns. Now you're turning 18 carries into potentially 75 yards and maybe a touchdown, maybe even 2 with the way he has been playing of late. The eye test is so much better on Cam Akers. He looks like the guy that a couple of years ago went in the second round. Everybody was like, oh, yeah, that guy can be an absolute beast for the Rams going forward. The offensive line's playing a lot better, even despite all the turnover they've had there. They've started like 14 different offensive line combinations in 15 games, and it doesn't mean anything. They don't have their own pick. They're not going to make the playoffs, but I think it's appropriate on occasion to give these teams some serious praise. They could have easily
faded
said, we're
completely
good,
and
done.
thrown in the towel.
All of our veterans are gone. No Aaron
I agree.
Donald, no Cooper Kupp, no Matthew Stafford, no Allen Robinson. All these guys are making millions and millions and millions of dollars. This team is playing its tail off right now, and I think that has contributed to Cam Akers, and maybe more important. I mean, I suppose he could help you win a championship this week, but maybe just as important, going into next year, I expect to have high hopes for Cam Akers. Again, 2 months ago, I would have said, I don't know, man. It's going to be Kyron Williams. They're going to address the spot. Who knows? Now, I think Cam Akers is a real part of their offensive future going forward.
Gosh, it's so crazy just the way that's changed so quickly. And I don't want to say that he's a league winner, but if he's somebody that you grabbed off of
should
waivers.
be.
I was just going to say,
Could
that's
be.
what I've seen that on social too. People are like, well, yeah, I'm still alive. You might think, okay, you took Akers early, you're done. Like, you didn't make the playoffs. But people are like, no, he was on waivers. I
grabbed
picked him
him off
up.
of
He's
waivers.
sitting on my
Totally.
bench, and now he's a starter for me, and he's carrying me to a championship.
Which is awesome. What about Tyler Higbee? Can you trust Tyler Higbee after what he did last week, Mike Clay?
I'll tell you why. Yes, the answer is yes, and the reason is Baker Mayfield likes throwing to him. Right?
Yeah, he
had
does.
His first touchdown of the season was 2 weeks ago with Mayfield. And then this past week, obviously, was very busy. 10 targets, 9 catches, 94 yards, and two touchdowns. Yeah. And he only ran 22 routes in that blowout win. So, yeah, I mean, I have him 12, so I guess he's I wouldn't call him a lineup lock, but is he a serviceable tight end one in that conversation we talk about every week?
Yep.
That long list of guys you could plug in there? Absolutely.
And potentially no Derwin James, who's in the concussion protocol right now. He is
you're gonna see
practicing,
him.
though.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see whether he plays.
We'll
Yep.
see.
On the other side of that, really quickly, we've got Justin Herbert, who's been really difficult to be able to figure out because I don't know how you don't start him because he's got such a great set of skill position players around him, Field, but he's been very disappointing if you have used him.
Yeah, he has been. Like, this is a player who I would say I don't know how many teams are playing for a championship right now with Justin Herbert, but this morning Chapin was asking me, like, how'd it go last night with Dak? And I was, 14 whatever points, like, not enough to lose me, but probably not enough to win me the championship on Thursday Night Football. And she was like, I'm playing him in the championship. My opponent has Dak. And I was like, okay, so this kind of worked out for both of us, right? Like, average, like, who do you have? She's like, Justin Herbert. And I was like, you have Justin Herbert and you're in the championship as the number 1 seed with the first round bye? And she was like, yeah. I was like, are we switching jobs soon? Also,
rest
yes.
of the team's stacked.
Yeah. No, she does have a great team. She's learned. And there's a rule. I'm not allowed to touch the team. That's part of the parameters here. But
right.
Here's the only reason why I will. So I have Herbert as quarterback 8. The Rams defense has been playing more spirited football of late, but still has a lot of key injuries. Probably won't see Aaron Donald again on Sunday. That doesn't hurt Justin Herbert's outlook. And I will say this: while the touchdowns haven't been there, Mike talked about the volume the other day. I'll spin it somewhere else. He's been playing great football.
Of course, yeah.
Like, he's been playing objectively really, really solid football. This is not like some of these guys. Like Mac Jones just doesn't throw touchdowns, right? They just don't score touchdowns. Like, they score touchdowns in Los Angeles. So you are getting good play from Justin Herbert. He has been unlucky in the touchdown department. That's why I have him as quarterback 8.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm at 10. We're close. He's a back end QB1. It's but keep in mind too, the last 2 he's had 2 duds in a row. Before that, he had 4 straight top 12s, right? So it's not like it's been non-existent. He's been hanging in this range.
If there's a Jared Goff available, I could see that being a reasonable streaming option.
Like a Goff or Cousins, but otherwise you're starting him.
It's just crazy to think that here we are in week 17 and there's a fully healthy Chargers team with Justin Herbert under center, and we're ranking him where we're ranking him because of how this offense is played.
On the other hand, Daniel, it's crazy to think that we're in week 17 and Josh Dobbs and Jared Sitter are making their first career starts. Football is a weird game. Weird game we play.
Very weird game. All right, let's talk about this next one. We have Sunday night football. Lineup blocks for this one include Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, and Mark Andrews.
Do you want to ask me about Lamar Jackson? Because I think Stephania is so sick of giving the same answer.
This programming looked like a good idea at the time. But
looked at
they flexed it last week.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
Because they thought, well, maybe we're going to get Lamar back.
Gotcha.
I think they thought that, and no.
That's not happening.
He's not practicing. He's not. And we had Adam on yesterday talking, and Adam said with Lamar not speaking yet, he wouldn't want to put words in his mouth that had anything to do with his contract situation, et cetera, protecting himself. But I would just remind people that PCL injuries are tough. And when Adam was saying yesterday, the team really believed he could be back in 1 to 2 weeks. I'm like, that's a really aggressive estimate because look at we don't have a lot of quarterbacks who have this injury that we have known about. But Zach Wilson did a year ago and missed 4 games. But when we've seen other skill position players, anybody who runs, and we know Lamar Jackson is a running, mobile quarterback, whether he's running as a running back or just needing to be mobile and nimble like he is and be quick, he's got a lot of quickness about him. PCL injury is a problem, and we've seen it with other players, including Zeke last year. We know how tough it was for him to come back. We've seen Dalton Schultz when he tried to come back from it this year and struggled initially when he was playing and then had to step away again. It's not an easy injury. So we don't know all the variables that are factoring into this, but it could be as simple as it's a tough injury, and for him to be able to play and be effective and safe, he can't right now.
Is Mark Andrews, so Mark Andrews is still a lineup lock, even if Tyler Huntley is under center then?
What do you do?
Because I think that's the question that I know everyone in fantasy history is asking if they are playing him right now.
Yeah, it's tough to bench him. I mean, we dropped him and he's still 5th just because of the state of the position. He's still their number 1 receiver. I know he's frustrated. We're all frustrated, but he's still the core target in that offense. The target share still been strong, even if there's low volume. I don't know how you find your way. Like, who are you putting in? Like,
someone do me
Tyler
a favor.
Conklin?
Let's do
like
this. Yeah, someone do me a favor. If you are thinking about benching Mark Andrews this week, send me a tweet at Field Yates or post on at Mike Clay NFL on Instagram. Comment there. Who are you considering benching Mark Andrews for?
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, listen, if you picked up Evan Ingram off the waiver wire,
Yeah,
like,
well,
that's
the
it.
only
Yeah.
name.
yeah, of course, it's no problem. But if it's like, yeah, I'm benching Mark Ingram to play, as Mike said,
Mark
Tyler
Andrews,
Conklin or
but
Noah
yeah.
Fant. Oh, I'm sorry, who did I say?
Mark Ingram.
Okay, Mark Ingram, who
Is
shout out
Years
him.
ago.
Mark Ingram, who's going to be on the radio broadcast for the Sugar Bowl on Monday for Alabama, a burgeoning media career. But if you are benching Mark Andrews for somebody, let us know, because I'm not saying it's totally inconceivable. I just think it's highly unlikely that that player is any more of a guarantee than Mark Andrews would be.
I agree.
I would say this, and this is just the emotional side of it, but like you could look at the Cole Kmets of the world and be like, boy, do I start Cole Kmet against the Lions or Mark Andrews this week? And if you've, I think Cole Kmet is someone you could have grabbed off waivers. It's just so difficult because I know he's one of those guys. It's Mark Andrews is so unbelievably good. No one's questioning the talent. It's just he's been disappointing from a fantasy perspective.
I think if you go with Kmet over Andrews, that's fine. I can't really follow you, especially against Detroit. It's a great matchup. He crushed it. It's best game of the season against them last time they played. But to Fields' point, he's just as likely to have a dud as Mark Andrews. Right?
Sure.
I mean, it's very, very, very much. It's
Absolutely.
It's disappointing, but Andrew's still a really good player and still seeing a big target share.
As far as the Steelers go, when we look at all of these players, I've got Deontay Johnson in my, boy, if you need to start him as a flex play, you can, but I don't really want to territory. That's where I have him.
Is he going to get a touchdown?
Probably
Is it going to
not. I mean,
happen?
I don't think so.
You don't think
Not
It's-
anymore.
No,
But-
it's not going to happen. I thought you were
we unlocked one of them
manifesting
last week.
these
We
days.
manifested
Yeah.
Alvin Kamara last week. We
I
did.
know.
I picked the score of this game to be 20-17. The touchdown scorers are going to be Zach Gentry and like Patrick Queen. That's going to score the touchdowns, right? Like it's going to be a defensive touchdown for the Ravens. Zach Gentry, the backup
Patrick
tight
Ricard
end.
still on the offense
Patrick
too?
Ricard, Project Pat. Of course, he's still on
Yeah,
the
he's-
Ravens. Yeah. So I mean, this game just screams grind it out.
Yeah.
Probably going to come down to the kicker. So the Ravens will probably win. Also
Yeah.
because the Ravens are like the Titans now. They just find ways to win ugly. It has
They've been
not
doing that
been
for a
a
while.
juggernaut schedule by any stretch for Baltimore, but you can only play the teams on the schedule. This one just feels like 20-17 at best.
Yeah. I was
ahead,
just
Mike.
going to say, if you want an excuse to break a tie and use Johnson, despite no touchdowns, the last 3 weeks, he's wide receiver 17, right? So
Yeah.
he got a lot of volume, 7 or more targets in 5 straight. So that helps your cause. But again, we have him borderline top 30, so he's fine. And Charlie Kolar, by the way, he's scoring a touchdown.
Charlie Kolar, I loved him at Iowa State. He was a good player.
Any chance that you're trusting J.K. Dobbins here, Mike? Yeah, in his 3 games back, he's looked pretty good and efficient. And, to Fields' point, if this is a ground and pound type of a game, it might fit that type of game script.
Yeah, those first 2 games back, 120-plus yards in both. We felt like, okay, there's no target volume, but he's running it so well, we could sort of justify plugging him in there. But then 59 yards last week, and he kind of lost a job in the second half. Gus Edwards was playing better. They went with Gus, and he did fine down the stretch. 41
risky
carries
run,
and 2 targets in 3 games back. It severely limits his upside. So I don't want to. Not against Pittsburgh either. Like
Not if you can help it.
flex if you're in a tough spot, but I'd rather not.
All right. Our Monday Night Football preview is brought to you by Geico. Switch to Geico. See all the ways that you could save. We're talking Bills at Bengals. Lineup locks for this include
Oh, yeah.
Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. 6
What a
players
game.
right there. I am pumped about this one.
Yeah.
Wait, what
This is the best game on the slate.
So how about this is so great because if you play in a 17-week season and don't play into week 18, the deciding game of your fantasy championship
Could well be Monday
is
Night
going to be
Football.
like,
Yeah.
with all due respect to some of the other games, like there probably were people that had players in last night's game. They're going to determine their fantasy championship, and they're like, you know what? I'll just wake up and see how CD Lamb did for me, right? Because are you really slogging through last night's game? Monday Night Football, whether you're in the championship, whether you don't play fantasy football at all, which would be weird if you listen to this podcast still, but whether you're in the consolation bracket, whatever. It's a great must-watch game on Monday night.
No doubt.
I think the reason why we have people that don't play fantasy but still listen to the podcast is because of the Variety article. I think they just saw that and they came over and they were just.
Oh,
bitching
okay.
about
Well,
it.
welcome
You know
here.
what I mean?
Welcome aboard. We are going to pivot into critical television acclaim shows, or critically acclaimed shows from television. That's to be part of our off-season budget. And wine.
Wine.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
I can do both
And
of those
iRacing.
things.
Can I want to figure out, Stephania. We talked
going to be an awesome game, just across the board. A ton of lineup blocks, like we said. You had mentioned Hayden Hurst earlier on in the week. Is he somebody that we expect to be able to see out there for the Bengals?
I think that it's likely that he plays. I mean, he has been practicing. He's been, apparently looking pretty good, according to Zach Taylor. And this is a calf injury that's obviously cost him some time. And I think Hayden Hurst will be out there.
Okay. So when I look at this, when I see this, obviously Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, you're starting for the Bills.
Yep.
What is it that I'm doing with the running backs? Because right now, I don't feel confident in starting either one of them because of the split that they are both under.
I think you have two options. You could either leave them on your bench for week 17, or you could drop them and hope your teammate or the person you're playing picks them up and starts them, because that's the situation you want to be. I mean, look,
Tough
could this game
matchup.
be? Could this game be 42-39, like a shootout? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But anytime it's two high-powered offenses like this, and if that happens, obviously there's going to be some value here, so these guys will score some touchdowns. But I don't feel great about it. I know Devin Singletary's coming off a big game, but keep in mind that was his best fantasy performance since week 3.
Yeah.
Since week 3, he barely had a snap edge over James Cook. 15-13 in opportunities, carries plus targets, so barely ahead of him. And if this is a game where the Bills are actually behind, possibility against the Bengals, Nyheim Hines will be on the field catching some passes as well. He has been involved. I think you probably have two better running back options this week over any of these guys.
By the way, the last time that we had a game built up like this, it happened to involve the Buffalo Bills earlier this season against the Chiefs, and we are forecasting 42-39. It was 24-20.
Yeah.
It was much more of a grinded out game. So all the fantasy points we thought would be available weren't necessarily available. So I have Singletary as RB38, James Cook as RB42. I would avoid, if possible. I think both of them would have to find the end zone to pay off.
Agreed. I think the only other conversations that we have here are with the rest of the Bills pass catchers. If you've been rostering,
do we just do this one last time for for giggles, right? Like we've been doing it the entire season. Gabe Davis, do you play him or do you not?
Yep.
Yeah.
Dawson Knox, do you play him or do you not? They both catch passes from Josh Allen.
Do you know Gabe Davis is under 6 targets per game this season? 5.9. Who would have thought?
So
I mean,
painful.
being in that spot, playing every down. He's been healthy all season. The volume has not been there. We needed 2 more targets per game for him to have the breakout season that we wanted this year.
Here's the reality. Could he score 25 fantasy points? Yeah, he's much more prone than any other Bills receiver not named Stephon Diggs. I'm not expecting a Cole Beasley or an Isaiah McKenzie or somebody else to get 25 fantasy points. What percentage or how likely is that? I think pretty low based off how it's been over the past month and a half.
He's gotten to 12 4 times. 12 fantasy points 4
12.
times.
And he hasn't done it in 6 straight games.
Yeah,
So I'm saying,
exactly.
is he capable of doing it? Yeah, we saw that game. Wait, it was a Pittsburgh who they threw the 99-yard touchdown pass to. Like, we've seen Gabe Davis have big days, but we now have the largest sample size we'll have at any point during the season going into championship week, and the numbers suggest it's less likely than more likely that he has a monster game.
Yeah, he's not boom bust now. He's boom
Mid.
bust.
Okay.
Yes, you got 2 busts in there.
there's 2
And
busts
one
in
every
there.
one out of every 3 is a boom.
I think it's tough because if I was a Gabe Davis manager, I would know going into my matchup that I have to wait until Monday night to be able to figure these things out. And with a guy like this who is boom bust, I don't want to wait until Monday night knowing I don't have any other options for him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ideally you have a better play than a guy we have in the mid 30s if you're in the championship. Again, he's a guy you had to reach on to get in drafts because he got super hyped up. That's probably not
Ideally, you do. Ideally, yeah. I'm just
You know what, too, though? But, one thing I will say is I'd be surprised if Gabe Davis is anything more than, one of 2 options for your flex that you are considering this week.
Maybe, yeah.
Right? He's probably not one of your top 2 or 3 wide receivers, most likely. So, while you're choosing between him and agonizing over him versus somebody else, I think in most cases, your championship is going to be decided by your stars, right? It's going to be decided by whether Josh Jacobs gets 6 points or 16 fantasy points, or whether Devontae Adams comes back to where he's been or not, right?
Or does Dawson Knox get 25 this week?
Yeah, he could. He's been red hot. He's a top 10 tight end for us this week. But then again, I'm thinking about one of my best teams a couple weeks ago. Great regular season, and then gets crushed by Jerick McKinnon and Zay Jones. So that's what decided it. You know,
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. I know. I'm just saying on average, though, I'm looking, if you have a team that has Christian McCaffrey and Joe Mixon, and you've got A.J. Brown, and you've got, Joe Burrow as your quarterback, those 4 could easily each hit 20 fantasy points this week, and you'd be like, all right, I'm in a pretty good spot because of those 4 stars, not because I played Gabe Davis over Richie James, and Richie James gets you 12.2, and Gabe Davis only got you 9.7.
Yeah, I would start Gabe Davis over Richie James. I'm going to do that.
I'm just, my point is that, like, players that are on that fringe of like, I don't know, like, do I want to flex them? Probably not, but can I? Yes. So that's kind of where I was going with it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I do, yesterday Adam Schefter was on and he brought up Gabe Davis against Jahan Dotson. Like, that's a conversation.
That is
that is a conversation. You could go
totally.
Dotson.
Jahan Dotson's been playing really well lately. I like the recency bias thing too. I mean, when you see somebody who gets more involved, and that's definitely where Jahan Dotson's
We also have a fantasy league, a dynasty league named after Jahan Dotson.
Yes, we do.
It used to be the Josh Dotson League, and now it's been adopted to the Jahan Dotson League.
Outside league. Yeah, that's true.
Josh Dotson, did he have a C his name? Josh Doxson?
Yeah.
Okay.
D-O-C-T-S-O-N.
Yeah. So it's the Jahan Dotson.
We don't talk
dynasty
about that
league.
league. Every time I draft somebody,
It's
every
not your
rookie.
fault.
It's your fault.
It's
your fault.
terrible.
It's not great.
Look, I've had the worst luck
You
ever.
can trade your players to me.
I want to ask one quick question, and then we'll move
Not
on.
Justin
We'll
Herbert.
tell people where we're going for this offseason, how we're doing the next couple of episodes and everything like that. So,
But
but
that up again.
Gabe Davis, going into this offseason, how is it that you're going to rank him going into next year in your way too early rankings? Because I've been thinking about this over the last 2 days.
Not great, probably. I mean, they might add another receiver, right? I mean, they're not happy with that 3 spot, and they're probably going to go after a slot receiver. They even brought Cole Beasley back because they're in kind of a desperate spot there, and he's barely playing. But nonetheless, I could see them making an addition this offseason. So.
Bummed. I'm bummed. I had a lot of
My brain's
high
not
hopes.
there yet is my answer.
know.
My brain
Oh
is
my
like, I
gosh.
can think about like the top
The
10
Bills are going to
players in my
still. The
rankings.
Bills are thinking Super Bowl bound with the group that they have. So they're.
That's you.
Oh,
No, that's you. You're wearing
It's your watch, dude.
Oh, it's my watch.
Yeah.
Wow,
my
Mike
watch
is just,
talking.
he has been, have you noticed like the past 6 weeks, Mike just like
just
passes
not
blame
you.
to other people all
no,
the
it's,
time.
it
you know?
was- no,
I'm
see,
getting,
no,
I'm
it
getting
was-
Instagram followers. I'm getting That's what it is. They're flying in now.
you should be
My phone-
thanking me then.
my-
That's
thank you.
right.
Thank you.
I
appreciate
opened
it.
the floodgates
My
for
watch
you.
is literally thanking you. That's
Because did you hear what Siri said? I'm not sure I understand. Where it was like, like all of a sudden, like,
Not
I
sure I
don't know,
understand.
like Serena
Followers.
Williams follows you. Why is Serena Williams following me on Instagram? I'm not sure I understand. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. For us, for the rest of this
Thursday.
season, yes.
Thursday.
So we're going to be on
Thursday.
Thursdays going
Thursday.
forward every
Thursdays.
Thursday. We are
Yeah.
not going to be back until Thursday, and then we'll be back the Thursday after that. After that Thursday, we'll be back the Thursday after
I
that.
see how this works.
I see a trend.
And it's going to keep doing that
I
thing
see.
going forward.
Yeah.
So we'll
Sense of
see
trend.
you
That's
next
What you mean by
Thursday.
Thursdays.
Good luck in Week 17 in your championship lineups. If you play in Week 18, we will be back next
Yeah,
Thursday
next
to
week
be
we're
able to
going to
talk
do it.
about
And
it.
we're going to spend the end of the show thanking people, you, the listeners, for all your dedication and loyalty. Because it
Everything
has
you've
been
done.
an unreal season.
Absolutely. We love you guys. Thank you so much. Don't forget to love each other. Please be kind to yourself. We love you. We can't wait to see you next week on Thursday.
Is it Thursday?
It's
Thursday.
Thursday.
Got it.
Confirmed
Good luck here in
Thursday.
Week
What day of
17.
the week?
Go Wins those
Wednesday before
championships.
Friday. Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
No, I'm for my own
okay.
edification.
Oh, okay, got it.
Gotcha.
I don't even know what that word means.
I think it's a word.
For your own education?
Edification.
I've
It's
never
like, I think
heard
it's the
that.
process
you
of
might wanna
educating
look that up.
somebody.
It's called a dictionary.
Diction.